Hello, time again for our devotional. I mentioned yesterday that I wasn't sure how my day was going to go today and if I would be able to or not. But I found a few moments here. I'm going to do this devotional and then I'm off to some other appointments. Whatever your day looks like, I hope you have a good day. I hope that you're realizing God's with you in it and including Him in all that you do. Let's take a moment now and let's just do our devotional, looking at Proverbs chapter 4, verse 3 today. And we're just going to do this. Now, we've been going through Proverbs a verse at a time. And for most of the book of Proverbs, that's going to work really, really well, almost all of it. But there's a couple places where it's mid-sentence and it just gets it's a little more difficult to understand what's going on just from the sentence, the one verse. And so, because the sentence goes over several verses. So this chapter has a couple of places like that, and verse 3 is one of those places. So it's going to feel like a half thought, but bear with me, we'll give some explanation. So here I'll read it to you. It says in Proverbs 4, verse 3, it says, "When I was a son to my father, tender and the only son in the sight of my mother." And then it goes on, and I won't read it right now. You can read it yourself later, but it goes on and say how his parents taught him. And then it takes several verses to talk about the teaching of his father and how his father taught him. But it leads in with this, so I wanted to focus one verse at a time. So we're going to focus on verse 3, where it says when this time in his life, when I was a son to my father. And then he uses this, as the poetry often does in Proverbs, this kind of parallel thought, tender and the only son on the side of my mother, right? So father, mother. We have this idea, tender and the only son in the sight of my mother. It's kind of a reference to how young he was, right? Like he's saying that I learned wisdom. He's teaching us wisdom. And he's saying when I was young, I was learning wisdom from my father. How young was I? Well, tender and the only son on the side of my mother. So it sounds like perhaps a first child or very young, and a young mother in those ancient days, they would have children quite young. So, he was very young. His parents were probably quite young. At any rate, he certainly was young. And so this is kind of saying, it's almost like if we were put it in English today and not a word for word translation, we might paraphrase it along the lines of, when I was young, very young, my father started teaching me. And that's kind of the idea. That's when his education in wisdom and godliness and morality began. So that's what the verse is talking about. So let's go to our four questions today. So question one, when is it too young to start teaching your children wisdom and godliness? Is there such a thing? And I would say, how early should you start? And I would say you should start when they're in the womb. And I know that sounds kind of like a joke, but it's kind of serious. Like you should be in your mind as a parent. As soon as you realize there is a little human growing inside of you, you should be thinking about, okay, I want to train this person in the ways of God. I want to introduce this person to God right now. Actually, I'm going to pray for them now. And then, of course, as soon as they're born, you start to include God in their life verbally and in practices and in everything. You just start to wrap their life in God right from the moment you can. I would say that's when you should start. It's that important that we do this in our tradition here at our church. We have something we call baby dedication, where parents will bring a child while it's still an infant. They'll bring the child to church one week, and they'll, in front of the congregation, they'll make these vows to God, saying, "I'm going to lead this child to you. I'm going to make sure that I give this child every chance to know all about you and to be raised in your ways." And so that's kind of our church tradition. But I think that's very biblical. The idea of we start teaching our kids when they are young, very young, and it's really important. I will mention on that front, on our YouTube channel, if you search around a little bit, you'll find that Pastor Chris is doing videos that are meant to augment the home Bible studies that he's been producing for our parents here in our church. And of course, anybody can take advantage of those videos. But we really believe it's important to be teaching your kids as soon as you can. And so we're trying to help with that process. And he's doing a great job. Check out his videos. I would really encourage it. Question two, shouldn't we prolong the innocence of youth? Some people think, we shouldn't be teaching our kids. We're making them grow up too fast. And I've heard this, many times, make our kids grow up too fast. And in some ways that's true, because we can we can certainly expose children to things they're not ready for, and in that sense make them grow up too fast. Yes, that's true. The wisdom of a parent has to be such that you look at a child and you go, this child is at an age where they can handle this much, or they can start to handle something that later will be more, but right now they can handle this level. And so we have to have wisdom in how we teach children. But the mistake would be to think that we need to prolong youth or prolong the innocence of youth. A lot of parents fall into the trap of not wanting their kids to grow up too fast, and so they make sure their kids grow up too slow, and that's not good. We shouldn't rush adulthood, and we shouldn't prolong childhood. We should let it happen as it's meant to. God designed humans to grow in the care of their parents. Every human is meant to grow in the care of a mother and father who start training the child immediately on how to grow into the adult they're someday going to be. And so we slowly expose our children to more and more responsibility, or we expose them to more and more obligations, or we teach them that they can do this, and we teach them they're not yet ready to do that. And so it's a bit of a, it's something you have to be very deliberate and careful about. But to err either side is not good. To rush it or prolong it is not good. Instead, walk with your child, knowing that the goal is not to keep them a child, but that eventually they're going to be a grown-up who will have children of their own, and will then hopefully teach their children, and that they'll know how to do that because they had a father who taught them wisdom, or they had a mother who taught them wisdom, and so they are ready to teach their own children that same wisdom. So, question 3. Don't children learn in their own? Parents just have to keep them safe while they learn. This idea became kind of popular a few decades ago, this idea of just let children grow on their own. And it kind of had this idea that, we as parents, our only job is to make sure they don't kill themselves. But other than that, make sure they don't wander out into traffic and stuff. But other than that, let them just learn as they go. And to that, I would say, in a fallen world like ours, that seems extremely reckless. To just let kids decide for themselves how they're going to grow is not unlike saying they're on their own. Here's a fact. If you don't teach your children good, godly, moral, and wise course of life, someone else is going to teach your kids. There's no such thing as naturally going to do it on their own kind of stuff. Someone is going to teach them an ideology or an idea, and you're the one that God meant to teach that, so do it. But if you leave it and just see what happens, well, someone else will take that up and they'll teach them, and who knows where they'll end up. Or if you want to go back to Proverbs chapter 1 and look at how it says it this way. I'm not going to read it again. We already did the study, but it says it basically like this: that there's a woman betrothed to you, young man, and this woman is wisdom, and you are supposed to go to her. And so the father leads his son in that direction. But there's a seductress who is foolishness. And if you follow that seductress, you will end up at death. So there's these two paths. And so we need to teach our children to choose the right path. Otherwise, they'll go with the easy path, which is not usually the good one. And, well, then they will end up in destruction. So we can't do that. We can't just let kids raise themselves. Question 4. Is it the parent's job? Sorry, my sentence is mistyped here. Is it the parent's job to teach this, or is it actually the school's job? Maybe that's what the schools should do. Some people have that idea. They think that children, parents have kids to be friends with their kids, and you send your kids off to school to learn all about reading, writing, arithmetic, and wisdom and morality and all that stuff, and we kind of think maybe that's the place. And I would say once again, absolutely not. It's not the job of the school to teach your children how to be grown-ups. It's your job. You're the grown-up in their life. You're the grown-up in their life. You're not. God didn't design us to be friends with our kids. Hopefully that occurs. But if it does or doesn't occur, it's not the point. The point is we're designed to be parents to our children. We're meant to be the role models and the prototype, if you will, of their future. And so they're supposed to look at us and go, oh, look, there, dad's wise. Dad loves God. Dad chooses he chooses what to do and what not to do. And he makes a stand on right, and he refuses to go down the road of evil. And I want to be like dad. And that's how it's supposed to be. But there's a lot of myths in our kind of anti-God society that say things like kids are supposed to rebel against their parents, and parents are the enemy, and there's all these really terrible ideas that somehow parents are a problem. And the fact is, they're God's solution to how to grow up. We can't offload that to a school. And here's another little thing: you can't offload that to the church either. The church is here to help you. That is the role of the church, is to help lead people to God, and to help equip people to serve God, and so on. So that is our role. But primarily, it's actually the parents' role to be like a priest to their own children, and to lead them in righteousness and lead them in godliness. And the church should help. And the church should teach your kids too. And the church, that's all part of it. But the primary responsibility is you, not the school, not the government, heaven forbid, and not even the church. It's the job of the parents to lead their children in the ways of God. And so that's just a little reminder today for us, to remember that responsibility and do it. So if you're a parent today, the question for you is, who's leading your child to God? Is anybody doing it? You should. And so I would encourage you to start today. If you go, I don't think I've done anything to lead my kids to God. Well, start today. It's never too late to start. So start today. Start letting them know, hey, there is a God. You need to know this God. And here's what God thinks. God loves you, but God also expects things of you. And just start teaching them wisdom. Go through the book of Proverbs, and get help. Sure, get help from other godly parents or from the church. Take a look at Pastor Chris's videos or whatever. You can get help. But the important thing is start to do it. Lead your children in the ways of wisdom, the ways of God. God, I pray, help us do it. Bless the parents. Any parent that happens to watch this video today, bless them. Help them to lead their children to you. God bless. The Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow for verse 4. Have a great day.